Stephen Sondheim and James Lalpine had two hits on Broadway, Sunday in the Park with George and Into the Woods, supported by runs in off-Broadway theaters to help shape them. Lalpine and Sondheim took their next show, Passions, directly to Broadway. The off-Broadway theaters would help Sondheim nurture more shows, including Assassins and Roadshow. My name is Dr. Dominique Royam, and I'm a music director, conductor, and music communicator, here to help you achieve a connection to the music you love. Follow me on social media at Dominique Royam for more content. Let's talk about Stephen Sondheim. Sondheim's next show was Assassins, about a number of madmen that tried, and sometimes succeeded, to assassinate the President of the United States. In 1988, John Weidman approached Sondheim with an idea to musicalize Woodrow Wilson at the Paris Peace Conference. Sondheim thought the tableau was more cinematic than theatrical, but it reminded him about a play he had seen many years earlier when he judged entries for a young playwrights competition for the Musical Theater Lab. A script by Charles Gilbert was called Assassins. Sondheim wrote to Gilbert and asked to use the idea. Gilbert countered with an invitation to work on it with Sondheim, but Sondheim said he already had someone in mind. When Weidman and Sondheim got to work shaping the piece, the first thing they threw out from Gilbert's play was the narrative. They came up with a review format and focused on shooters that had tried and or succeeded in harming the President of the United States. Even though Sondheim shared Weidman's fiercely liberal political stance, Sondheim wanted to lose the Brechtian politics up front, characters in the back style, and put the characters up front with the politics surrounding them. Frank Rich, the reviewer from the New York Times, called it an anti-musical about anti-heroes. In writing the anti-musical about anti-heroes, Sondheim used a technique near and dear to him, pastiche. He draws from the popular music of the era of each assassin, and from the traditional American music, with a feel of John Philip Sousa, Stephen Foster, Scott Joplin, and others. The original show had 3 musicians in the pit, but the 1990 cast recording featured full orchestrations from Michael Starobin. The opening number, reprised at the end of the show, is Everybody's Got a Right to Their Dreams, a sprightly tune with an ominous message. The finale reprise focuses on the idea of the American dream, and with all of the assassins holding guns. Let's take a look at the 2004 Tony Awards performance of the reprisal of Everybody's Got a Right to Their Dreams, the final number of Assassins.
Everybody's got the right to be happy. Don't be mad, life's not as bad as it seems. If you keep your goal in sight, you can climb to any height. Everybody's got the right to their dream.
Everybody's got the right to be different.
If you wanna be different,
at times they go to extremes.
Go to extremes.
Anybody can prevail. Everybody's free to fail.
No one can be put in jail for their dreams.
The show opened off-Broadway at Playwrights Horizons on December 18, 1990, and ran for 73 shows. It had been sold out since the previews. Reviews were mixed. Some thought the show was in bad taste because it opened up right as Operation Desert Storm and the Persian Gulf War were happening. John Simon said, "When the terrible events of the Gulf began, Sondheim and co., all affluent folks in no great need of turning a buck, could have done the gallant thing and shut down, or shot down, their not very viable brainchild." Jack Kroll wrote, "You can swallow the savage comedy, but not the show's moral fuzziness. Everyone's got a right to their dreams" is a pretty pathetic rationale for the complex questions that Sondheim does raise. The show failed to transfer to Broadway, which in Sondheim's mind made it a failure. The show had a different fate in England. 2 years later, the Donmar Warehouse production at Covent Garden sold out its 12-week run. Irving Wardle wrote in The Independent, "One mystery of the off-Broadway failure was the complaint that it had no viewpoint. From the transatlantic perspective, the viewpoint was as clear as a Presbyterian sermon." Sondheim and Lapine's next musical together, Passions, was unusual because the concept was conceived by Sondheim, just like Sweeney Todd and Roadshow. The story was ultimately adapted from Igno Hugo Tarchetti's 1869 novel Fosca, discovered by Sondheim through Eto Scola's 1981 film Passion d'Amore. Originally fated to be combined on a double bill with a musical based on the book Muscle by Sam Fussell, Passions eventually evolved into a 2-hour and 50-minute work with no intermission. Sondheim was unusually attached to the love affair depicted in the story, where the hero and the heroine find unconditional love for one another. In an interview at the time, Sondheim made reference to what John Mortimer called the blurred connection between art and life. He said, "There was some personal connection, clearly. I think it's about the desire to open up, a desire to be like Giorgio. Giorgio is the hero of the work, who falls for the ugly and disfigured Fosca." While writing Passions, Sondheim's life had changed. He began a relationship with composer Peter Jones and felt he was in love for the first time in his life. His friends remarked on the change in Sondheim after Jones entered his life. He was content and happy, something they had not seen in Sondheim. The dedication for the work of Passions is Peter Jones, in token to how much he meant to Sondheim. Sondheim's score was unexpected as the topic of the musical. He called it straightforward, non-ironic love story, which lacked the wit of Into the Woods, the intellectual detachment of Sunday, and the irony of Night Music. With the exception of some comic relief from soldiers in the garrison, there was a show with no protection. The book was almost completely through-composed, to the point where there was no separate musical numbers to be listed in the program. This gave the whole show the flavor of an opera, intensified by the dramatic subject material. Michihiko Kutakani of the New York Times wrote about the score, "While the harmonic language of Passions is reminiscent of such soaring ballads as Joanna and The Barber and His Wife from Sweeney Todd, its highly patterned use of motifs recalls Sunday in the Park with George." Each of these three main characters in the show possesses a distinct musical motif. Clara's songs, which are essentially written in major keys, have a bright waltzy feel to them that gradually mutates into something sadder when she begins to miss Giorgio in the latter half of the show. Fosca's songs, by contrast, possess a melancholy minor key quality that gradually becomes more buoyant as she comes closer to realizing her love. Sondheim talks about the ballad that Fosca sings when dictating her letter to Giorgio. He worked for 8 to 12 hours a day, starting with a stream of consciousness, filling out the overall music and lyrical patterns. Sondheim said, "I always describe it as one long rhapsody. It's about the yearning between two people." The minor key matched Fosca's tonal pattern, and he used an undulating chord progression and rippling chords from a previous Fosca ballad to suggest emotions welling up in an impassioned plea. Let's listen to that ballad, now called I Wish I Could Forget You, sung by Donna Murphy in the original Broadway production, filmed for PBS's series American Playhouse shortly after the show closed on Broadway.
Yes?
My dearest Fosca, please.
My dearest Fosca.
I wish I could forget you, erase you from my mind. But ever since I met you, I find I cannot leave the thought of you behind. That doesn't mean I love you.
That doesn't mean I love you.
I wish that I could love you. Please.
The reception of Passions by the theater-going audience was one of laughter and disbelief. Producers counted 20 different times in the musical that the audience laughed in otherwise serious moments. Donna Murphy, the actress who originated Fosca, would come off stage crying at her reception. Audiences would applaud every time Fosca had a seizure, and during one of the previews, someone yelled, "Die, Fosca, die," from the balcony. Sondheim said that audiences were not ready to be challenged with material like this. The story struck some audiences as ridiculous. They refused to believe anyone, much less the handsome Giorgio, could come to love someone so manipulative and relentless, not to mention physically repellent as Fosca. As the perennial banality would have it, they couldn't identify with the main characters. The violence of their reaction, however, strikes me as an example of the lady doth protest too much. I think they may have identified with Giorgio and Fosca all too readily and uncomfortably. The idea of love that's pure, that burns with D.H. Lawrence's gem-like flame, emanating from a source so gnarled and selfish, is hard to accept. Perhaps they were reacting to the realization that we all are Fosca, that we all are Giorgio, we all are Clara. The critics were more positive about the work. Vincent Canby of the New York Times wrote, "It's now apparent that Through Passion is technically a period piece. It's the boldest, most modern musical work to arrive on Broadway in years." Clive Barnes wrote, "Once in an extraordinary while, you sit in a theater and your body shivers with the sense and thrill of something so new, so unexpected, that it seems for a few moments more like life than art. Passion is just plain wonderful, emotional, and yes, passionate. Sondheim's music, his most expressive yet, glows and glowers, and Tunick has found the precise tonal colorations for its impressionistic moods and emotional overlays. From the start of his career, Sondheim has pushed the parameters of his art. Here is the breakthrough. Exultantly dramatic, this is the most thrilling piece of theater on Broadway." With a run of 280 performances, Passion was the shortest-running musical to win the Tony Award for Best Musical. After Passion, Sondheim got together with his previous Assassins collaborator, John Weidman, to develop a show about the colorful businessmen Addison and Wilson Meisner, based on the book The Last Resort by Cleveland Armory. The show was titled Wise Guys. The musical premiered at the New York Theater Workshop from October to November 1999. The production was stopped due to ongoing legal dispute between Sondheim, Weidman, and Hollywood producer Scott Rudin. It was subsequently rewritten, renamed Bounce, and premiered at Chicago's Goodman Theater in 2003, directed by Hal Prince. This was the first time that Hal Prince and Sondheim had collaborated on anything since the disaster of Merrily We Roll Along in 1981. The musical was then transferred to the Kennedy Center in D.C. with the Chicago cast and ran in October and November of 2003. The negative reviews prevented it from having a run in New York. Another reimagining of the musical, this time rewritten without an intermission, called Roadshow, opened off-Broadway at the Public Theater's Newman Theater on November 18th, 2008, and closed on December 28th, 2008. Reception by the critics was mixed. Many praised the score, but thought that the show didn't hit the mark. Ben Brantley, in his New York Times review of the 2003 Kennedy Center production, said, "It never seems to leave its starting point. Mr. Kind and Mr. McGillen execute this self-introduction title song charmingly, translating wryness and ruefulness into a breezy soft-shoe sensibility. But in a sense, when they have finished the song, they have already delivered the whole show. Bounce, which features the vibrant Michelle Pauck as a zestful gold digger of both Klondike and jazz age varieties, and James Powell as the Meisner's mother, only rarely kicks into high gear than the one that gently propels the opening duet. Their trajectory feels as straight and flat as a timeline in a history book. The bounce in Bounce is never very high. Much of the music, while whispering of earlier, more flashily complex Sondheim scores, has a conventional surface perkiness that suggests a more old-fashioned, crowd-pleasing kind of show than the composers want. But his extraordinary gift for stealthy weaving dark motifs into brighter musical fabric is definitely in evidence, mellifluously rendered in peerless Jonathan Tooke's orchestrations. Brantley, in his review of the 2008 production, said, "The problem is that this musical's travelogue structure precludes its digging deep. It hints at dark and shimmering glories beneath the surface that it never fully mines. Like its leading characters, Roadshow doesn't quite know what to do with the riches at its disposal." In 2006, Sondheim said about writing new work, "No, it's age. It's a diminution of energy and the worry that there are no new ideas. It's also an increasing lack of confidence. I'm not the only one. I've checked in with other people. People expect more of you, and you're aware of it, and you shouldn't be." However, that did not stop the theater community from celebrating the work of Sondheim. Standing room only concerts of his work were produced for his 80th birthday, both in the US and for BBC proms. The 2010 New York concert called Sondheim, the Birthday Concert, was accompanied by the New York Philharmonic and a laundry list of Sondheim regulars, including Michael Cervais, Alexander Jamianji, Joanna Gleason, Patti LuPone, Audra McDonald, Donna Murphy, Mandy Patinkin, Bernadette Peters, and Elaine Stritch. It was broadcast as an episode of Great Performances on PBS on November 16th of the same year. The idea was revived in an online streaming format in the year 2020 for Sondheim's 90th birthday. Called Take Me to the World, a Sondheim 90th birthday celebration, it also served as a fundraiser for artists striving to end poverty, or ASTEP. The whole show can be found on YouTube. I will link it above and below. The final number of the show, sung by the ensemble, was I'm Still Here, an emotional tribute to theater in the time of a global pandemic. Let's listen to a bit of that now.
I got long last year, and I'm here. Lord knows I was there, and I'm here. Lord knows here, I'm still here.
Something like that.
I've not sang in weeks.
Sondheim died on November 26, 2021, aged 91. His death was sudden, and he was not ill beforehand. He died in Roxbury, Connecticut, at his home, surrounded by his friend and his husband, Jeffrey Romley. He had just celebrated Thanksgiving with those friends the day before. The New York Times obituary called Sondheim one of Broadway history's songwriting titans, whose music and lyrics raised and reset the artistic standard for the American stage musical. Thank you for joining me in this series about the life of Stephen Sondheim. If you want to learn more about the composer, an excellent biography is Stephen Sondheim, A Life by Meryl Seacrest. A link can be found in the description box below. Another great book, this time more centered around Sondheim's achievements in music, is Sondheim's Broadway Musicals by Stephen Banfield. Like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more. What do you want to learn about next? Leave me a comment down below. You can also support the making of these videos on Patreon. These videos take over 20 hours of research to complete, so Patreon is a great way to show your support. The bibliography for this video can be found on my website, DominiqueGraham.com. Interested in seeing my process? I document it on my social media, so follow me for more updates. My handles are listed below. Thanks again, and see you in my next video.